So, Ciaran, we're going to talk about searches that are being conducted for a young teenage girl who has been missing for 30 years and whose story is quite extraordinary. Arlene Arkinson is her name. Can you tell us a little bit about those searches and any idea why, or is there new intelligence or something?
Well, I think those searches are happening in and around the Donegal Tyrone border, specifically around a village, Castlefin village, which basically is where police believe Arlene is buried. She went missing 30 years ago. No one has ever been convicted in connection with her disappearance. Her body obviously has never been found, but that's where police and Arlene's family think she's buried. And the story goes back to August the 13th, 1994. Arlene had gone with friends for a night out from her home in Castlederg in County Tyrone to Bundoran in Donegal. And she's never been seen since. But the main suspect, the person believed to have killed, murdered Arlene and buried her, is a notorious sex offender called Robert Howard.
And during her inquest in recent years, I think it was ruled that he was certainly named as being the man who killed her.
Yeah, Howard was named. It was 2015. But this story goes back a long, long way. It's been a horrific ordeal for Arlene's family. The latest searches, there's been loads of searches over the years for her, and this is just the latest in a long line. There was searches carried out in the same area in May. Clearly nothing was found there, but there's a real belief that Arlene is buried in this area.
Is that coming from sort of what has been pieced together over the years? So Howard was obviously in the area and had, access to a car. She was certainly seen at the time by witnesses with this guy, a man, getting into a car. She was obviously supposedly getting a lift home. Is it to do with the investigation that she wasn't spotted elsewhere, that they don't believe that he took her very far? Is that why they're concentrating literally in the short distance from where she went missing?
Yeah.
Or did he ever confess to anything?
He never did, no. Howard was a strange character, not surprisingly. He was born in 1944 in County Laois, and he had a long history of sexual offences. He was in a industrial home. He was put in an industrial home in Clonmel when he was 13 after a burglary. When he got out of the home, he lived rough for a time and around his home area in Wolf Hill in County Laois, and then ended up going to London. He was convicted of attempting to rape a young girl in 1965. Amazingly, in those days, he only served a few days in Borstal and then was sent back to Ireland.
Right.
So he then reappears in England again in the late 1960s. He was convicted of attempted rape of a woman in her own home in Durham, and he served a couple of years for that offence, and then again returns to Ireland. The next we hear of him, he's living in County Cork, and in the 70s he was convicted of the attempted rape of a woman in her own home in Cork. He actually was obviously trying to evade capture. He was arrested at Dublin Airport, and was, at the time, there was a psychiatric study or report done on Howard, and it was claimed that he had a temperament where they believed he was going to attack again, and it was actually advised that he be jailed for an indefinite period. He was jailed at that time for 10 years, and then when he was released, he ends up in Newry, County Down, at a alcohol treatment centre, and it's there he meets a woman from Castlederg called Pat Quinn, and they subsequently Howard subsequently moves to Castleberg in the early 1990s, and that's what brings him into contact with Arlene. So in 93, Howard, by that stage, is living in a flat in Castleberg. He's charged with the rape of a young girl in the village. He's actually released on bail. So to bring the story up to kind of the moment in terms of Arlene's disappearance, in August 1984, Howard is out on bail in connection with the rape of another young girl in Castleberg, and he is the partner of Pat Quinn. Pat Quinn's daughter is a friend of Arlene's. On the night that Arlene goes missing, she was babysitting for her sister Kathleen, who she was very close to. After Kathleen came home, Arlene decides that she is going to go to Bundoran with her friend and her boyfriend. So they get in a car. Howard is driving the car, drives them to Bundoran, and then apparently waits for them or goes out with them that night. And then they return to Castleberg. The others that were in the group are dropped off, and Arlene is last seen in the car in the early hours of that morning with Howard.
Right.
So that is fairly conclusive evidence.
Was he? So he's obviously, with the background he has, he's a suspect very early on from her disappearance. Yeah. Was he arrested, or why was he never charged? Was it because the body was never found?
This is where the story takes an even stranger twist. Howard, the police knew of his sexual offending. They knew he was the last person seen with Arlene. Howard isn't arrested until 46 days after Arlene goes missing. And in that time, it's known now that he destroyed evidence, including, amazingly, the car that he was actually driving that night, his car. He was able to sell the car, and the car wasn't found then. So by the time the police arrest the RUC, as it was then, arrest him 46 days later, he has evidence is obviously is not there that they would have got had he been arrested, within hours or days, or questioned about Arlene's disappearance. And this is where her family have always maintained throughout the 30 years that Howard was protected by the police. He was a police informer. Right. He was being used by the RUC in the local area. He was an outsider. He'd come in. If you remember, like 1984 or those early 90s, the troubles still would have been very much on the go. So the suspicion is that Howard was being used by the RUC as an informer, and he was being protected because of that clear belief of Arlene.
You'd have to wonder what use a sex offender, a repeat sex offender, whose victims ranged in age from 6 to 60, would be as an informer, no?
Well, I think from his point of view, his use to the police could have been just local gossip, picking up things as he heard, maybe in pubs or wherever. It was just that I think the intelligence world then was, a lot of it wasn't just, for want of a better term, big ticket information. It was those little bits of information that they were maybe getting from various different sources. Yeah. Just in those small towns, small villages, where they could sort of piece this together. So we suspect that if, as is believed by a lot of people, that Howard was being used as an informer, that could be. And again, during the inquest, the prosecution applied for a lot of public interest immunity certificates, PIIs, which are used quite regularly, to protect, to stop the police having to give out information in an inquest for different reasons. It could be national security reasons or protect police operations. For example, like in the use of informers. So the Arkinson family and their solicitors have fought that fight that the granting of these certificates, and it all plays under their belief. Like why? I spoke recently to Arlene's sister Kathleen, and she was saying, like, why apply for so many PIIs over the death of a 15-year-old girl? You know, it's why was there so much kind of going on in the background? Why were they not bringing the information out at the inquest?
It's just so hard to believe, sitting here in 2024, that a police force in our country could protect a serial sex offender after a 15-year-old child goes missing and is presumably raped and buried, and they'd protect him.
Well, that's what the family.
Well, the family have an absolutely clear reason for believing that, given that it took 46 days. She's last seen in his company. We know his history. They knew his history back then, and yet he's not lifted for 46 days and has all that time to get rid of whatever evidence he needs to. What came of him then after that? Did he stay living in the area?
Well, he stayed, but he was allowed to travel freely. In terms of the rape that he was accused of in 1983, the charges were downgraded and he got a suspended sentence. So he was allowed, for all intents and purposes, he was a free man. But in 2003, he was charged with the murder of a young London girl, 14-year-old Hannah Williams. Hannah went missing in 2001, I think it was, from her home. And her body was found a year later in a cement works, actually near her home. Howard was charged with it and convicted of a murder in 2003 and was jailed in England. Amazingly, in 2005, he was then charged with Arlene's murder, but was acquitted. And during the trial, the jury weren't given evidence of any of his previous convictions, including the murder of Hannah Williams. So Arlene's family were clearly disgusted by this, that he was acquitted of a murder. So that was 2005. Howard then remained in prison. He died in prison in England in 2015. Mm-hmm. He was 71 at the time. So with him died a sense of injustice for Arlene's family, that he was never convicted in connection with her murder, and it left that sense of unknown, particularly with her body not being found. It's just been a constant.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the difficulty of the 2005 trial, and of course they wouldn't have been able to give details of his previous history at trial until sentencing, until he was found guilty or not. As far as I understand, certainly that's the way it works down here. But clearly the lack of a body, because that's always been the biggest kind of stumbling block for any murder trial. When there is no body, there's no cause of death. There's circumstantial evidence, I suppose, but given the screw up by the police in the first place to leave it 46 days before his arrest, they lost all those probably threads of circumstantial evidence that could have been put before a jury, which could have ultimately convicted him. But what of his girlfriend? Did she stay living in the area, or is she?
No, she still lives in the area, and in the inquest, which concluded in 2021, Part 1, she actually admits that she gave an alibi for her at the time. She said on the night that Arlene went missing, she said she had told police that he arrived back with her at 3 a.m., which wasn't true. He didn't arrive back till 9 a.m. She later admitted that she had lied and claimed it was because she was trying to protect the fact that he had been out when he should have been under bail curfew. Mm-hmm. So she still lives in the area. The difficulty for the Arkinson family is that in terms of police on the northern side of the border, there's no relationship there at all. In 1996, the RUC officers arrived at Arlene Arkinson's home in a very dramatic way and dug up her garden as part of the investigation into trying to find Arlene's body. So that they obviously didn't find anything, but so that has ruined relationships with the family and the RUC and subsequently the PSNI. So this search at the moment is being carried out on the southern side of the border by the Gardaí.
Right.
The Arkinsons have been praised a lot for their help and intensive investigation. So because there's that cross-border element, the Castledearg's on very close to the Donegal border. Bundoran is not too far over the border. So it's that area, particularly the kind of rural area on both sides of the border, that is the area where it's believed that Arlene's buried, particularly in and around the village of Castlefun. So this search is happening on the southern side of the border. The most recent searches have all been carried out on the southern side. So it seems that there's real intelligence or information which the Gardaí have, where they are pinpointing a certain area, and of course, finding a body, is a very difficult process, particularly from 30 years ago. The landscape could have changed. There's, so many things could have changed.
Absolutely. But at least they're pursuing it for the family, because you can imagine the relief, I suppose, that they might feel to get her remains back, that they could bury her and have a place to go.
It's all been brought back in because it was last month was the 30th anniversary of Arlene's disappearance. So the fact that the research is happening again has brought great comfort to the family. And as I said, there's a good relationship there with the Gardaí. So they're hopeful.
Yeah.
I think there's a plaque. There's a plaque on Arlene's parents are buried in the cemetery in Castledearg, and there's a plaque with Arlene's name on it on the grave. But as her sister Kathleen told me recently, all they want to do now is find Arlene's body and lay her to rest with her parents.
Terrible story, and we can only hope that one of these days that they will, get lucky with the search. I think they use all sorts of geographical profiling and stuff like that nowadays in these investigations, where obviously the suspect is dead. Very few people probably, if any, know where he buried her. He was presumably operating alone, but they can use this sort of profiling of the landscape and, discover the most likely places he could have driven in a car and taken her body. And,
We've had some investigations recently in Northern Ireland with the searches for the disappeared. That's ongoing at the British soldier Robert Naird. There's searches going on for him at the minute. So it's the fact that there's so much technology now that can help in searches. But it's still a painstaking process. But in terms of Arlene's case, I think the family are just so happy that she hasn't been forgotten about, and that there's still a search is happening. As I said, the latest before this current search, there was a search in May. So the assumption is that or the Gardaí feel they have a bit more information, or is it just an extended search of where they were in May? We don't know at this stage, but it seems positive enough that they're still searching for, particularly after the 30 years, and I know the family are happy with that and remain hopeful that one day they'll find Arlene. Yeah,
for sure. Well, thanks for that, Ciaran, for the story of Robert Howard and for remembering Arlene Arkinson. And let's hope that there is some developments in that and that some remains can be found. So thanks very much, Ciaran O'Neill. I'm Nicola Tallant, and you're watching Crime World, a podcast about criminals, drugs and the underworld in Ireland and across the globe. Make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you can be the first to watch all our latest episodes. You can also listen wherever you get your podcasts.